Welcome to Study Skills for Success in College. This is Chapter 3, Managing Your Resources, and this is lecture number 3, the last lecture of this chapter. The subtopic here is time and money. So in this lecture, number 3, we'll discuss the following: financial wellness, money matters. And then I'll just touch on the last, which is choosing your financial institution. Gandhi, or Mahatma Gandhi, is a good example of somebody who made very large positive changes, both in his country and actually around the world. And yet he only had 4 possessions: glasses, a watch, sandals, and a robe. I worked as a grocery clerk at the ripe old age of 16. After informing me that he was giving me a 50-cent per hour raise, my boss, the owner, called my name just before I reached the exit door. "What's the most important thing to you about this job, Steve?" he asked. I smiled. "The money," I replied. "Why would I work if I didn't make money at it?" Now, I was a young whippersnapper back then, to be sure. But now that I've lived a life, and now over 42 years later, I'd like to talk to that, well, actually, 44 years later, now I'd like to talk to that guy, that 16-year-old Steve McGill. He had a lot to learn. A successful life has little to do with money, and everything to do with the effects that we have on those around us, particularly our families. I know that there are some who disagree, probably many, but I also know that most, over time, and particularly when they get up there in their lives, begin to change their attitude about money and the effects that money has on their lives, as opposed to the effects on others have on their lives. So what are your views on success and money? Complete this exercise shown here, which is 3-9, if you would like to get a little more insight on that personal topic. That is your views on success and money. For most of us, money is a limited resource. It has to be managed, a lot like our time, which we've talked a lot about in the past several lectures. Everyone's financial situation is unique, so each budget needs to be personalized. That's important. Keep in mind that most people will always need to budget carefully, no matter how much their income increases. This is because as your income grows, so will your responsibilities, both financial and otherwise. Even people who have millions of dollars go broke or live very sad lives. We've all heard those stories. The money you have coming in is called your income. Income can come from a lot of sources, like your salary, obvious things like salary and wages, an allowance, child support, government payments like welfare or Social Security, tax refunds, gifts, interest. Anything that's money coming in is called income. The total you have coming in of all these sources is your gross income. But your employer probably withholds some of your pay for things like taxes, Social Security, otherwise known as FICA, insurance, union dues, parking, whatever other deductions. Usually there are several, and always too many. The money you actually take home is called your net income. That is, of course, all of your income after you've been robbed of, after things like taxes, Social Security, insurance, those things. It's easy to know what your income is. Now for the hard question: where does all that money go? The things you spend your money on are called expenses. There are two types, fixed expenses and variable expenses. Fixed are those that don't change, and of course, variable expenses are those that do. Fixed expense examples would be things like rent or mortgage. Well, hopefully, rent doesn't change very frequently. Utility bills, things like that. Variable expenses, examples would be food, clothing, entertainment, gas, repairs for your car, sometimes educational expenses as well. Now, ideally, your net income is greater than your total expenses. If you want to pay for your education or buy some dream house in the future or a dream car, you've got to understand your personal finances and come up with a plan for how to pay for these things. Planning and controlling the use of your money is, of course, called budgeting. And just like any other planning and controlling, this requires self-control. But its many benefits include giving you an idea of where your money's going. The truth is that most people don't know where all their money is going. That is, when they spend the money, of course, at that moment, and in that particular case, they know where the money is going. But at the end of the month, it always seems that too much money was spent, and if you asked them where that money was spent, they wouldn't be able to tell you a complete answer or anything close to a comprehensive answer. But this can also decrease your anxiety and your money worries to make a plan. It can help you focus on your goals and your priorities in life. It can help you begin to control your spending when you have a plan. It can help you figure out what you can spend on fun things and activities. Exercise 3-10 gives you the opportunity to be honest about needs versus wants. And that's important when financial planning is a goal. To keep things simple, here are two basic steps to budgeting. The first is to gather all the facts by getting a good idea of your income and expenses. This takes time and good record keeping. Once you have all the facts, the second is to analyze your situation and then develop a budget. Of course, you'll need to review your budget once in a while and make adjustments as necessary, but that's life. Let's work on step 1 in exercise 3-11. The first step is filling in for total income for the month. The second step in this exercise is filling in for total fixed expenses for the month. And then, of course, the third is in filling in for total variable expenses for the month. Now I've got a good picture of your monthly income, if you've done this, your expenses, your savings. Now it's time for step 2, which is analyzing your financial situation. Now, there are several ways to do this. Some people like to break their expenses into large categories and just show how much of their money or percentage of the money they spend on each category. Each month, figure 3-4 shows a sample of that. Another method is to ask yourself several important questions, as in exercise 3-12. Do you have enough income to pay for your expenses? That's a simple yes or no. Are you spending too much money? If so, where can you cut expenses? Is there a particular category in particular where you tend to spend too much? Are you able to save money to put toward your goals? Now, don't worry. It's normal to feel like you'll never have enough money to reach your goals. But with a good plan, you can get there. The key is consistency. Another key is discipline. And another key is to continue without getting discouraged. If you came up short when you compared your income to your expenses, there are a lot of things you can do to change that. First, consider where you can stop spending so much. We aren't talking about living off instant noodles here, like the typical college person that we hear about, or even giving up on your phone or giving your phone up. Most of us can easily trim about $100 a month, often more than that, by making simple changes like these. These are just suggestions that can add up to save you a lot of money. After you've read this list, do exercises 3-13 and 3-14. In this section of the text, 3.6, choosing your financial institution, 4 subtopics are covered. First, credit card usage. These things are dangerous, we know that. It's important to know about things like interest rates, which are inevitably very high. And it's also important to know the positives and negatives of using credit cards. Now, we all know the negatives, but do you know the positives? There are some positives to using credit cards. For number 2, maintaining a good credit score. A good credit history can really serve you well in your future. I mean, it's critical to have a good credit history because of this, because it can serve you so well, particularly with regard to future loans. Conversely, a poor credit history will treat you like the ugly stepchild. So it's important to take the steps that are necessary to keep your credit score high. The third thing in this section of the text that's covered is taxes. Terms like FICA or Social Security, Medicare, write-offs, and other terms are important to understand, even if on a surface level. The fourth is financing your education. Now, as of late, it seems that public college costs have diminished considerably over the last few years. But college is never cheap. It's helpful to understand terms like financial aid, grants, scholarships, subsidized student loans, and more, so that you don't get caught in the web that's entangled so many in the past decades with regard to financing their education. And then the last in this section is a word about identity theft. There are some really good tips about this in the text that will help you to avoid becoming the victim of this really horrible act. Never give out your Social Security number. Be cautious with credit card numbers. Don't carry your Social Security card in your wallet. Check your credit rating often. Beware of email scams. These are just some of the things that are discussed. And I would highly encourage you to carefully read this part of the text. Some of you will be happy to know that that is the end of today's lecture. Pretty short one today. Let's take a look at what we've learned, and thanks again for listening. Take care.